Captain Rachel Wells stood at the bridge of the Excalibur, her eyes fixed on the massive display screen before her. The stars looked different tonight. Wrong. She had spent 20 years in space, and never had the void between worlds felt so empty. "Captain, we're picking up something strange from Sector 7. Lieutenant Thomas Reed called out from his station. His fingers moved quickly across the control panel, bringing up readings that made no sense. The stars, they're going dark. Not just dimming, but completely vanishing. Rachel walked over to his station, her boots making soft sounds against the metal floor. The bridge crew fell silent, watching their captain lean over the strange readings. After 15 years of commanding the Earth Defense Force's flagship, very few things could make Rachel Wells worried. But this was different. "Show me the time-lapse," she ordered, keeping her voice steady. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a section of space they all knew well. One by one, stars began to wink out. Not like a light being switched off, but like something was eating them from the inside out. "Get me Dr. Hayes," Rachel said, straightening up. "And contact Earth Command. They need to see this." Within minutes, the tired face of Dr. Aaron Hayes appeared on a side screen. His normally neat hair was messy, and it was clear they had woken him up. But as soon as they showed him the readings, all signs of sleep vanished from his face. "This isn't natural," he said, leaning closer to his camera. "Stars don't just die like this. Not this fast, and certainly not in this pattern." He pointed to his own screen. "Look at the energy readings. Something is draining these stars, consuming them completely." Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. "Doctor, in your professional opinion, what are we looking at?" "Captain," Hayes paused, choosing his words carefully, "I believe we're watching someone harvest stars for their energy. And whoever's doing it doesn't care about the worlds that depend on those stars for life." As if to confirm his words, the emergency communication system burst to life. Distress signals began pouring in from a dozen different alien civilizations. Some were in languages their computers could barely translate, others were just desperate bursts of data, but they all said the same thing. Their stars were dying. "Captain," Thomas called out again, his voice tight with urgency. "We're getting readings from Proxima Centauri. It's starting to show the same patterns." Rachel's mind raced. Proxima Centauri was Earth's closest stellar neighbor. If something was killing stars, and it had reached that close. "Sound General Quarters," she ordered, her voice cutting through the growing tension on the bridge. Alarms began to blare throughout the massive ship. "Get me full power to engines and sensors. I want to know what's doing this. And I want to know now." The Excalibur's powerful engines hummed to life as crew members rushed to their battle stations. Rachel returned to her command chair, watching as more reports flooded in. Whatever was destroying the stars was methodical, moving through the galaxy like a swarm of locusts devouring a field. "Message from Earth Command, Captain," a communications officer announced. "They're mobilizing the entire fleet. We're ordered to investigate Proxima Centauri and engage if possible." Rachel nodded grimly. "Send acknowledgement. Mr. Reed, prepare all weapons systems. Dr. Hayes, I need you to keep analyzing these readings. Find me a weakness." As the Excalibur turned toward Proxima Centauri, Rachel watched the star map on her display. More stars were vanishing, leaving behind nothing but darkness and dead worlds. Humanity had fought wars before, defended Earth against various threats. But this was different. This enemy wasn't just threatening one world or one system. They were destroying the very things that made life possible. "Course laid in, Captain," her helmsman reported. "Ready at your command." Rachel took a deep breath, looking at each member of her bridge crew. They were scared. Who wouldn't be? But they were ready. Whatever they found at Proxima Centauri, they would face it together. "Take us in," she ordered. "Maximum speed. And may God help us all." The Excalibur leaped forward into faster-than-light travel, racing toward humanity's first confrontation with the beings that would come to be known as the Void Makers. As they traveled, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to discover something that would change the course of human history forever. Behind them, more stars continued to die, their light fading into an ever-growing darkness that threatened to consume everything in its path. The Excalibur dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Proxima Centauri. The ship's crew gasped at what they saw. The star that had burned bright red for billions of years now looked sick, its color fading to a dull orange. "Energy readings are off the charts," Thomas Reed said from his weapons station. His hands moved quickly over the controls. "Captain, there's something out there. Something big." Rachel Wells leaned forward in her command chair. "Show me." The main screen changed to show what looked like dark clouds moving around the dying star. But these weren't normal space clouds. They moved with purpose, swirling and reaching toward the star like hungry fingers. "Dr. Hayes, are you seeing this?" Rachel asked. The scientist's face appeared on a side screen. He looked pale. "Yes, Captain. Those beings, they're made of pure energy. They're literally drinking the star's power, breaking down its atomic structure." A flash of light caught everyone's attention. One of the dark shapes had noticed them. It moved away from the star, growing larger as it came toward the ship. Rachel felt her heart beat faster, but kept her voice calm. "Shields up. All weapons ready." The being stopped about a mile from the ship. It was huge, bigger than the Excalibur, and looked like a storm cloud made of dark purple energy. Inside it, sparks of what looked like lightning jumped back and forth. "Captain," Thomas called out, his voice tense. "It's scanning us." Before Rachel could respond, a beam of dark energy shot from the creature. It hit the Excalibur's shields hard, making the whole ship shake. "Shields at 60%. Someone yelled. That was just one hit. Rachel gripped her chair's arms. "Return fire. All weapons." The Excalibur's laser cannons and plasma torpedoes fired at once. The weapons hit the dark being directly and passed right through it. The creature didn't even seem to notice. "No effect," Thomas reported, trying different weapons. "Nothing we have can hurt it." The beam attacked again. This time, 3 energy beams hit the ship. The shields flickered dangerously. "Shields at 20%. The ship shook harder. "We can't take another hit like that." Rachel knew they were in trouble. Their most powerful weapons were useless against these energy beings. They needed to retreat, to warn Earth. But something caught her eye on one of the screens. "Thomas, look at this reading." She pointed at a small data stream. "When our railgun fired, the metal slugs didn't pass through it completely. They disturbed its energy field for a split second." Thomas studied the readings quickly. "You're right. The physical matter, especially the metal, caused some kind of reaction. But our railgun isn't nearly powerful enough to." Another hit rocked the ship. "Shields failing." "Get us out of here," Rachel ordered. "Maximum speed. Back to Earth. And download all sensor data, especially about those metal readings." The Excalibur turned and jumped to light speed just as the shields failed. Behind them, Proxima Centauri grew dimmer. On the long-range sensors, they could see more dark shapes arriving at the dying star. "We lost 3 research stations near Proxima," Thomas reported sadly. "Over 200 people." Rachel nodded grimly. "Send all our data to Earth Command and Dr. Hayes. Tell them we found our enemy. And tell them our weapons are useless." She walked to the main window, watching the blur of stars as they fled. They had just seen humanity's first star die, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. But that small reading about the metal slugs kept playing in her mind. It wasn't much, but it was something. Maybe, just maybe, it was enough to give humanity a chance. "Captain," called the communications officer, "we're getting reports from all over. These beings, they're calling them the Void Makers. They've been seen at 12 more stars." Rachel turned back to her crew. They looked scared, but she saw something else in their eyes too. Determination. Humans had faced impossible odds before. They had fought enemies that seemed unbeatable. And they had won. "Send a message to Earth Command," she said. "Tell them I need every scrap of data we have about metallurgy and weapons development. And get me Dr. Hayes again. We need to figure out why these beings react to metal. It might be our only hope." As the Excalibur raced home, more stars began to die. But this time, humanity had seen their enemy. And where there was knowledge, there was hope. 3 days after the Proxima Centauri disaster, Rachel Wells found herself deep beneath the Earth's surface. The air was hot and stuffy in these ancient tunnels, nearly 3 miles underground. Beside her walked Lucy Parker, Earth's best metallurgical engineer, her red hair tied back in a practical ponytail. "You're telling me," Lucy said, wiping sweat from her forehead, "that somewhere down here is a special metal that might help us fight these star-eating monsters." "That's what Dr. Hayes thinks," Rachel replied, ducking under a low tunnel section. "His team found strange readings coming from these deep caves. Readings that match what our sensors picked up when metal affected the Voidmakers." They reached a large cave where workers had set up bright lights and drilling equipment. Thomas Reed was already there, examining a dark wall of rock that seemed to shine with a faint blue glow. "Captain, Ms. Parker," Thomas nodded to them. "You need to see this." He picked up a chunk of strange-looking metal ore. When he moved it, it seemed to ripple with an inner light. "We've never seen anything like it." Lucy took the ore piece, her eyes wide with wonder. "This isn't possible," she whispered. "The molecular structure, it's like nothing in our databases. This metal shouldn't exist." "But it does," Dr. Hayes said, walking up to join them. He looked excited. "And there's more. This metal has quantum-disrupting properties. It doesn't just interact with energy, it can break it apart." Rachel looked at the glowing ore. "Can we make weapons from it?" Lucy studied the piece closely. "Maybe. But we'd need to forge it at extremely high temperatures, higher than any normal forge can reach." She paused, thinking hard. "Unless what?" Rachel asked. "There's an old theory," Lucy explained, "about using the Earth's core heat for forging. Everyone said it was too dangerous, too difficult. But with this metal, and what it might do to those creatures." She looked at Rachel with determination. "I can build a forge down here, use the Earth's own heat to shape this metal." 4 days later, Lucy's team had built what she called the core forge. It looked like a mix between an old blacksmith's workshop and a high-tech lab. Pipes drove deep into the Earth, bringing up heat from far below. "Ready for the first test," Lucy announced. She stood before the forge wearing a special cooling suit. The heat in the chamber was intense. "If this works, we'll have our first star blade in about 6 hours." Rachel watched through protective glass as Lucy worked. The engineer moved with sure hands, treating the ancient art of forging with the precision of modern science. The strange ore glowed brighter and brighter as Lucy shaped it. Hours passed. More people gathered to watch. Thomas brought readings from space. 3 more stars had gone dark. They were running out of time. Finally, Lucy emerged from the forge. In her hands, she held a sword that seemed to be made of solid light. The blade glowed with the same blue energy they had seen in the ore, but stronger, more focused. "It's done," Lucy said proudly, though her voice showed her tiredness. "The first star blade. The metal's quantum properties are now fully activated. It should disrupt any energy-based life form it touches." "How do we test it?" Thomas asked. As if answering his question, alarms began to sound throughout the facility. Rachel's communicator crackled to life. "Captain." It was her ship's officer. "We've got a Voidmaker scout. It just appeared in Earth's orbit." Rachel looked at the glowing sword, then at her team. "Looks like we'll test it now. Get the blade to the Excalibur. Fast." Within an hour, they were in space. The Voidmaker scout was smaller than the ones at Proxima, but still dangerous. It moved toward them, dark energy crackling around it. One shot at this, Rachel said from her captain's chair. She looked at Thomas, who stood ready at the weapons station. They had mounted the Starblade in a special launcher. Fire when ready. The blade shot out from the Excalibur, glowing bright against the darkness of space. It flew straight and true, hitting the Voidmaker dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the creature began to break apart. Its energy form disrupted, torn apart by the blade's power. In seconds, it was gone, leaving nothing but empty space where it had been. The bridge crew cheered. Lucy grinned at her success, but Rachel kept her eyes on the stars. They had their weapon now. They could fight back. "Lucy," she said, turning to the engineer, "how fast can you make more blades?" "With more forges and workers, 12 a day." Rachel nodded. "Then let's get started. The stars won't save themselves." The Great Hall of Earth's Space Defense Center was packed with aliens. Rachel Wells had never seen so many different species in one place. Tall, short, scaled, furred, survivors from dozens of worlds that had lost their stars to the Voidmakers. Marcus Cole, a veteran soldier with graying hair and steady hands, stood beside her. "Never thought I'd see the day," he said quietly. "All these advanced civilizations coming to Earth for help. To learn about metal working, of all things." Rachel watched as Lucy Parker demonstrated the forging process to a group of alien scientists. The star blade in her hands glowed with its signature blue light. "Your species," a tall, crystalline being said, stepping forward, "you are considered young among the stars. Yet you alone found a way to fight the darkness." "How?" "Sometimes the oldest methods work best," Rachel replied. "While the galaxy raced toward energy weapons and plasma drives, we kept working with metal, kept forging, kept the old ways alive alongside the new." The aliens watched as Lucy handed the blade to one of their own. The creature's crystal hands glowed where it touched the weapon. "We can teach you," Marcus said, his voice carrying through the hall. "We can show you how to forge these blades. But we'll need to work together, share resources, fight as one." A wave of agreement passed through the crowd. These beings had lost everything to the Voidmakers. Their pride in advanced technology meant nothing now. Only survival mattered. Over the next weeks, Earth became a center of learning. The core forges worked day and night. Marcus set up training camps, teaching aliens how to use the star blades. It wasn't easy. Each species had different ways of moving, different strengths to work with. "Hold it like this." Marcus showed a group of floating gas beings. They had taken solid form just to learn fighting techniques. "The blade's power comes from the swing, not just the touch. You need to put your whole body into it." In another area, Lucy worked with alien engineers. They combined their advanced knowledge with Earth's ancient forging techniques. New alloys were created. Better blades were forged. "The quantum disruption field is 30% stronger with this mix," Lucy explained to her alien students. "See how the blue glow is brighter? That means it'll cut through their energy form faster." Rachel walked through it all, watching Earth's primitive knowledge save the galaxy. But time was running out. More stars died every day. The Voidmakers were getting closer. "Captain." Thomas Reed ran up to her, holding a datapad. "We just got word. The Voidmakers have changed course. They're heading straight for the Sirius system." Rachel's heart sank. Sirius was one of the most populated star systems in their sector. Millions of lives were at risk. She called an emergency meeting. Representatives from every surviving species gathered in the command center. The star map showed the Voidmakers' approach to Sirius, a swarm of dark spots moving through space. "We're not ready," one alien leader said. "We need more time to train." "We're out of time," Rachel replied firmly. "Sirius has 12 inhabited worlds. We can't let them die." Marcus stepped forward. "My teams are as ready as they'll ever be. The blade wielders might not be perfect, but they can fight." Lucy nodded. "We have enough star blades now, over 1,000, and the new designs are stronger than ever." Rachel looked at the assembled aliens. A month ago, they had been strangers. Now they were allies, trained in humanity's ancient arts of metalworking and combat. "We go to Sirius," she declared. "All of us, every ship that can fly, every blade we forge, every fighter we've trained. This is where we make our stand." The aliens straightened, standing tall, or floating higher, or glowing brighter, each in their own way showing determination. "The combined fleet leaves in 6 hours," Rachel ordered. "Spread the word. And may whatever gods you believe in watch over us all." As the aliens rushed to prepare, Marcus came to stand beside her. "You know," he said, watching the activity, "it's kind of funny. All these advanced races, and it's our primitive planet teaching them how to fight." Rachel smiled grimly. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Let's just hope they're good enough." The next few hours saw the largest fleet in Earth's history gather in orbit. Ships of all sizes and shapes, crewed by beings from across the galaxy, all armed with weapons forged in Earth's depths. The stars were still going dark, but now, finally, the darkness had something to fear. The combined fleet dropped out of light speed near Sirius. Rachel Wells stood on the Excalibur's bridge, watching as thousands of ships took formation around them. It was a sight she never thought she'd see, the gathered forces of 30 different species, all following Earth's lead. "Voidmakers detected," Thomas Reed announced, his voice tight. "A lot of them. Readings suggest over 200 energy beings, larger than any we've seen before." The main screen showed the enemy clearly. Dark shapes moved around Sirius, already starting to drain its power. The star's bright blue-white light was beginning to dim. "Lucy," Rachel called through the comm system, "are you ready down there?" In the ship's special forge room, Lucy Parker stood with her alien assistants. They had built a smaller version of the core forge on the Excalibur, allowing them to adjust the star blades during battle. "Ready, Captain," Lucy answered. "We've made some changes to the blades. They should be able to absorb some of the Voidmaker's energy now, not just disrupt it." Rachel nodded. "Marcus, how are your teams?" Marcus Cole's voice came through clear and strong. "Strike teams ready on all ships. Just give the word." Rachel took a deep breath and opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Captain Wells. The Voidmakers think they can take our stars, take our homes. They think their energy forms make them invincible. But they've never faced warriors with star blades before. Today, we show them they're wrong." She looked at her tactical display. "All ships, execute Battle Plan Alpha. May your aim be true." The fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Smaller ships carried teams of blade wielders. Larger ships provided cover fire, not to hurt the Voidmakers, but to distract them. The Voidmakers noticed them. Dark energy beams shot out, striking at the fleet. But they were ready. Ships dodged and weaved, their shields holding. "First wave, launch," Rachel ordered. Hundreds of small craft shot forward from the fleet. Each carried warriors trained by Marcus, each armed with glowing star blades. They flew straight at the nearest Voidmakers. The battle was like nothing Rachel had ever seen. The small ships got close to the energy beings, and warriors in special suits jumped out. Using their jets, they flew right into the Voidmakers' forms, star blades swinging. Where the blades hit, the dark energy broke apart. The Voidmakers tried to fight back, but for the first time, they could be hurt. "It's working," Thomas shouted. "The new blades are absorbing their energy. Each hit makes them weaker." But the Voidmakers were strong. They started joining together, forming larger beings that were harder to hurt. One massive form turned toward the Excalibur. "Evasive action," Rachel ordered. But before the ship could move, Lucy's voice came through. "Captain, wait. Look at their pattern when they join. Their energy, it's more concentrated, more vulnerable." Rachel studied the readings. Lucy was right. When the Voidmakers combined, their energy became denser, easier to target. "All blade wielders," Rachel broadcast, "focus on the merged forms. Hit them where their energy flows join together. The strike teams adjusted their attack. Now when Void Makers merged, they were met with coordinated strikes from multiple star blades. The weapon's blue glow grew brighter with each hit as they absorbed more dark energy. "Lucy," Rachel called, "what happens to all that absorbed energy?" "We can redirect it," Lucy answered excitedly. "The blades can release it as a focused burst, if we time it right." All strike teams, Rachel commanded, fall back to safe distance. "Lucy, tell them how to release the stored energy." The blade wielders pulled back. Then, on Lucy's signal, hundreds of star blades released their stored power at once. Beams of blue-white light shot out, tearing through the Void Maker's forms. The dark beings tried to flee, but it was too late. Their own stolen energy, turned against them by human-forged weapons, ripped them apart. When it was over, the space around Sirius was clear. The star's light began to strengthen again as the drain on its power stopped. "Damage report," Rachel called out. "We lost 37 ships," Thomas reported solemnly. "But we destroyed over 200 Void Makers. Captain, we won." Cheers erupted across the fleet, but Rachel kept watching her screens. This was just one battle. More Void Makers were out there, still draining stars. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "Tell them the star blades work better than we hoped. And tell them to keep the forges burning. This fight isn't over yet." Around her, the combined fleet regrouped, ready to defend the next star. For the first time since the Void Makers appeared, the galaxy had hope. The Excalibur's bridge was quiet as they approached the Sirius battlefield again. 3 days had passed since their first victory, but the Void Makers had returned, this time with thousands of their kind. "They've learned," Thomas Reed said grimly, looking at his screens. "They're keeping their forms separate, avoiding the weakness we found when they merged. And there are so many." Rachel Wells nodded. The enemy had adapted, but so had they. "Lucy, how are the new blades?" In the forge room, Lucy Parker was working with a blade that glowed brighter than any before. "The final batch is ready, Captain. We used everything we learned from the last battle. These aren't just weapons anymore. They're star metal in its purest form." Dr. Hayes appeared on a screen, his face excited despite his exhaustion. "Captain, we found something else. The energy the blades absorb. We might be able to use it to restart dead stars." Before Rachel could respond, alarms blared. The Void Makers had seen them, but instead of attacking, the dark beings did something new. They started pulling energy from Sirius faster than ever before. "The star's dying," Thomas shouted. "At this rate, it'll collapse in hours." Rachel looked at the tactical display. 12 inhabited worlds circled Sirius. Billions of lives would end if the star died. "All ships, battle stations," she ordered. "Marcus, get your blade teams ready. We hit them with everything we have." The battle that followed was chaos. Thousands of blade wielders flew into the swarm of Void Makers. The space around Sirius lit up with energy blasts and the blue glow of star blades. But something was wrong. The Void Makers weren't fighting back much. They kept draining the star, letting some of their own die to keep the process going. "Captain," Lucy called urgently. "They're not just killing the star, they're transforming its energy. If it goes, it'll take out everything in the system." Rachel watched as more of her ships fell. The blade wielders were fighting bravely, but there were too many Void Makers. Too many to stop in time. Then she saw it, a pattern in the way the dark beings moved. They all connected to central points, like spokes on a wheel. "Control nodes." "Dr. Hayes," she called, "if we released all the absorbed energy from our blades at those control points, could it disrupt their entire network?" Yes, but Captain, you'd need to get very close, almost inside their formation." Rachel looked at her crew, then at the dying star. She made her decision. "All ships except the Excalibur, fall back to safe distance," she ordered. Marcus, get your teams on those other ships. Lucy, bring the blades to the bridge. Captain, Thomas said quietly, if we go in there. I know. Rachel stood tall. But billions will die if we don't. Sometimes the price of victory is high. The Excalibur moved forward alone, its shields barely holding against the energy storm. Lucy brought the brightest star blades to the bridge, handing them out to the crew. Remember, she said, these blades hold more power than any we've made before. One shot at this. The ship pushed deeper into the Voidmaker swarm. Dark energy crackled against the hull. Systems began to fail. Now, Rachel shouted. The bridge crew raised their blades as one. Pure blue-white energy burst forth, striking the control nodes. The Voidmaker's network began to break apart. But the backlash was immense. Energy surged through the Excalibur, overloading systems. The ship began to break apart. Emergency transport. Rachel ordered. Get as many crew out as we can. Some escape pods launched, carrying crew members to safety. But Rachel and her bridge crew stayed, holding their positions, keeping the blades focused on the control nodes until the very end. The Excalibur exploded in a burst of light that rivaled Sirius itself. When the light faded, the Voidmakers were gone. The star's power stabilized. 12 worlds were saved. Billions of lives continued. But the cost was high. The Excalibur and nearly 1,000 of her crew were lost. Hours later, on the nearest rescue ship, Marcus stood with Lucy and Thomas, watching Sirius shine bright again. She knew, Lucy said softly. Rachel knew the ship wouldn't survive. Marcus nodded, but she also knew something else, that sometimes one must fall so many can live. That's what real leadership is. Thomas looked at the star, then at the blades they still carried. We'll make more ships, forge more blades, and we'll keep fighting. The others nodded. The Voidmakers were still out there, but now they knew they could be beaten. The price was high, but the stars would not go dark. Not while humanity's blades still shone. 3 months after the Battle of Sirius, the new flagship Phoenix approached the galactic core. On its bridge stood Thomas Reed, now captain, with Lucy Parker and Marcus Cole beside him. They led the largest fleet ever gathered, ships from every surviving spacefaring race. They're all here, Lucy said, looking at the massive swarm of Voidmakers around the core, just like Dr. Hayes predicted. They're trying to drain the most powerful stars in the galaxy. Thomas nodded grimly. And if they succeed, no star will be safe. He touched the star blade at his belt, thinking of Rachel Wells and the Excalibur's sacrifice. Status report. 10,000 blade wielders ready, Marcus answered. Every ship carries the new forge design. We can repair and enhance blades during battle now. The enemy had noticed them. The Voidmakers moved away from the core stars, forming into attack patterns they'd never shown before. Their dark forms seemed to ripple with stolen stellar energy. Dr. Hayes, Thomas called to the screen where the scientists waited. Are you sure about this plan? Yes, Hayes replied firmly. The Voidmakers store all their stolen energy in their central mass. If we can hit it with enough star blades at once, we can force them to release it. Maybe even reverse what they've done to the dead stars. Thomas opened a channel to the fleet. This is Captain Reed. We all know what's at stake. Every dead star, every lost world, every fallen friend has led us here. Today, we take back our galaxy. The fleet moved forward as one. The Voidmakers struck first, dark energy beams lashing out. But they found a different fleet than before. Ships dodged and weaved in practiced patterns. Shields held strong against attacks that would have destroyed them months ago. First wave, launch. Thomas ordered. Blade wielders poured from the ships, their weapons glowing bright blue against the darkness. Leading them was Marcus, his own blade shining brightest of all. The space around the core became a storm of light and shadow. Star blades cut through dark energy forms. Voidmakers struck back, destroying ships and warriors. But for each blade that fell, 2 more took its place. They're falling back to the core. Lucy called out, forming up around something. Captain, look. In the center of the Void Maker swarm, a massive dark shape was taking form, bigger than anything they'd seen before. The combined form of hundreds of Void Makers, protecting something that glowed with stolen stellar fire. That's it, Dr. Hayes said excitedly. Their central energy storage. All the power from every star they've destroyed. It's all there. Thomas gripped his command chair. All ships, clear a path to that central mass. Marcus, get your teams ready for the final strike. The fleet surged forward. Ships fell, but the blade wielders pressed on. Marcus led the charge, his team cutting through Void Makers with practiced skill. Almost there, Marcus called. But that energy mass, it's too strong. We can't get close enough. Thomas looked at Lucy. She nodded, understanding without words. Just like Rachel before them, sometimes victory required sacrifice. All power to the engines, Thomas ordered. Clear the bridge except for essential crew. Lucy, ready the ship's forge. The Phoenix drove straight toward the central mass, taking hit after hit. Lucy worked the forge controls, channeling power into every star blade on board. Now, Thomas shouted as they broke through the last line of defenders. All blades, release energy. Marcus, strike from the outside. Every star blade on the Phoenix fired at once, their combined power striking the stored stellar energy. At the same time, Marcus's teams hit from all sides. The dark mass began to crack, light pouring from within. It's working, Dr. Hayes yelled. The energy, it's reversing. The central mass exploded in a burst of pure stellar fire. The Phoenix was caught in the blast, its hull breaking apart. But as the ship fell, the released energy shot out in all directions. Across the galaxy, dead stars began to shine again. The stolen power returned to where it belonged, bringing light back to darkened worlds. The remaining Void Makers, cut off from their stored power, faded away into nothing. The galaxy was free. Hours later, rescue ships found the Phoenix's crew pod. Inside, Thomas, Lucy, and the bridge crew watched as nearby stars burned brighter than ever. Rachel would be proud, Lucy said softly. Thomas nodded, looking at the star blade in his hands. Its glow was different now, steadier, like the stars themselves. We did it, he said. Humanity's oldest craft, working metal, forging blades, it saved the most advanced beings in the galaxy. Marcus joined them, his battle-worn blade at his side. And now every species knows that sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. That wisdom doesn't always mean having the newest technology. As rescue ships gathered around them, the stars continued to shine. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The knowledge of Earth's forges would be preserved, passed down through generations. Because sometimes, in the darkest night, the oldest lights shine brightest of all.